corner we're recording. I'm also going to set it so that you guys can, from any point onwards, you can unmute yourselves. Okay, so if you want to come in and speak and ask a question, do be encouraged to do that. Okay, it's something I personally value quite highly. Okay, the fact that you ask questions, it means that I can, first of all, in future sessions, respond to the exact thing people want, but also answer your specific questions. So please don't be shy in asking questions. The chat's also there. I'll be picking up every question from there as well. So if you prefer to type it in, do so. Feel free to make those questions, those comments at any time. Now, this session today is all about the idea of a summer school. Okay. Now, this is something I've been doing for a long period of time in my own teaching, and I'll just contextualize that. I completely support and endorse the opportunity for young people to have a break in the summer, right? I think it's a really positive thing. I think that's really good for young people. I think it's really good for teachers. I think we want to support that structure. However, two reasons sort of traditionally, and there's another one obviously right now, but the two reasons traditionally why I've tended to use summer schools as a very significant feature of my teaching, or my let's call it my course structures, might be the best way to put it. So number one is that people forget stuff. Okay, so that's the first and fundamental. And I've said that in a very, very base way. I mean, we can look at the exact nature of that in a second. But let's be honest, people forget things. It happens. Teenagers forget things. I can teach them, we're going to talk today a bit about biology. I can teach them photosynthesis, and they're going to forget it. Okay, or they're going to forget the intricacy, the detail, the meat. They're going to forget that over time. Now, there are variables that influence that, how well I've taught it, how long the sort of the fallow period is, things like this. So people forget things. I'll look at the cog side behind that in a second. Secondly, is I also teach a subject, which some of you probably do as well, which is not on the top rung of the ladder in school for the rest of the year. I teach a lot of academic PE. I basically teach PE in biology. So I teach a lot of academic PE. And when I'm teaching that subject, if I ask for something round about February, March, April time, such as I need extra time, or I need the kids out of lessons, or I need to be able to do something, the priority is like down here, right? So I've sort of identified, I'm not even saying that's wrong or bad. I think depending on what you teach, you'll have feelings about that. I'm trying to say from my perspective, I've always looked for these moments where I can get my subject up the rungs, okay, and become that period or that opportunity to get some extra done. So I've always found traditionally that the summer period is part of that. Now, you could look at this as year 11s transition into year 12s, year 9s into year 10s into 11s. Obviously, the meaning of that could be slightly different if the students are transitioning from one course to the other. But what I've always wanted to do is, can I get some benefit, and can my students get some benefit in a period where largely learning is fallow? Can I take that and can I maximize that? That's what I'm trying to do. Equally, I don't want to cause them to be studying 10 hours a week when they're on, when they're on holiday. That is not what this is about. So what I tend to do is I tend to put a summer program together for the students. And I have a couple of principles, right? So principle number one is once it's set up, it requires zero input from me. Okay. So once it's in place, the assumption is I'm not doing anything, okay, over the summer. Now, that's the theory, right? I also recognize that I might remind someone who often needs reminding. Someone might send me an email, ask me a question. I'm going to answer that because I just do. You don't have to. You want to structure it so that they do it and it's structured for them, okay? But obviously, the degree to which you interact with them is completely down to you. But personally, set it up so it doesn't require interaction. Secondly, what I'm going to show you here is completely editable and customizable, okay? But the other principle I want to make sure is it's easy for the students to understand exactly what's required of them. And because of what I said before, it must prevent forgetting of those things that we've covered already. But I also want it to take us forward into the thing we're going to be studying in September. It's prepping them for that September thing. Now that becomes very important today, when, let's be honest, they've had relatively little contact, depending on the school, lots of variability, of course, but they've had relatively little contact for the previous period. And even if they're back in school with you in the coming days and weeks, your and their opportunities are going to be managed, or they're going to be directly influenced by the conditions in which you're working. So however that plays out, who knows, maybe it is the golden model that makes learning as smooth and efficient as possible. Who knows? I doubt it, but we're going to assume there's that need. Finally, before we get onto this, I've got two more principles that I really want to address here, okay? So the first one is that what I set up for them is agreed. Okay. So when I set it up for them, as I'll show in a second, I'm actually going to set it up before they finish for the summer, and they're going to know exactly what and why I'm setting it up for them that way. And they are going to agree to it. Okay. Now there'll be some parameters that you'll have to ask them permission about. Okay. It change in the summer, it sort of changes the relationship a little bit. You might have to say to them, look, some of you guys might be going away. How do you feel if this is literally a set of tasks for every single week? And lots of students will come back to you and they'll just say, yeah, it's fine, James. Just even if I'm on holiday, I don't mind doing an hour. Okay. So some will say that. Others will say, look, if I'm away, someone in another year, maybe not this one, they might say to you, look, James, second week of August, I'm climbing Kilimanjaro. I've got no chance that I can do this. And then obviously you've got to respond to that. But you need to get an agreement with them that the structures you're putting in place are fair, reasonable, and balanced. And if you do that, they will buy in. Now, whether you want to include the parents in that is up to you. Okay. But just bear in mind, you could be putting an assignment in where the student has to do something next to the pool in Spain. Or just be aware of that. So you need to get that agreement in place, that transparency in place, because otherwise you're going to get the phone call, why the hell are you making my son, daughter, whatever, do lessons when she's supposed to be reaction? Don't you know how stressful it is? You don't want that. So that agreement side of it is important. Anyway, enough blabbing from me. Let's actually have I missed the last principle. I also want it to bring out for me really sharp diagnostics at the end of this process. Okay. So you'll see that as we go through. So with that in mind, let's actually get into this. So this is going to be a bit of a all-in-one hit, I'm afraid. So I'll talk you through it. So first things first, this is my plan. Okay. Now, just so you guys are aware, when we finish the session today, I'm going to follow up with you with 3 things. Okay. I'm going to follow up with you with this document, which is all the theory processes that I'm basing this on. I'll reference these in a second. So I'll send you this. Oh, and it's actually the second page. And the second document is I'm going to send you the plan itself. Okay. Now you can change it, edit it, you can refine it. Are we making an editable? So Martha, we just realized that this at the moment is not editable. So Martha's making an editable version right now, so you can directly use it. But we're going to follow this plan. Now, I'm not going to talk you through it here because it's not as live as if I show you on the website. But this is what I'm going to do. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So let me be clear. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks in which I'm asking students to do things. So that is 1 week before we finish, and then the 6 weeks, if you've got 6, of the holiday period itself. Now, obviously, if you've only got 5, start with 2 before they finish, and then the 5. You can manage that. But what does this actually look like on the platform? How have we set this up? So let's go in. So this is Dr. McGonigal here, okay? And what she is setting her assignments up, and she is setting them up for 2 groups, okay? So we've got a batch of assignments here, and they are from the I chose biology as the example. I'm not really sure why, but I chose biology as the example. I've set this up as a biology course, and the course the students are doing is what we call GCSE paper 1, okay? Now, let's just go through this briefly before we sort of get into the weeds of this. I'm assuming that my period started today. Okay, so I am today on day 1 of this process, and my process is going to finish sometime in late July. Yours obviously will finish in late August, I assume. But what have we got here? In week 1, I've got a pre-summer diagnostic test. I'll come back to that in a second. And in week 1, I've got 1 lesson to watch, and I've got 1 12-question quiz on that 1 lesson. So just to be clear, I've got a diagnostic test. I've got watch 1 lesson. I've got 12 questions on that 1 lesson. Now, that is structured that way because I believe on average for the students, that is 1 hour's work in the week. Okay, so let's just go into it. I've got a pre-summer diagnostic. Let's go into that first. What have I set the kids here? I've set this as a mandatory single take test. So 1 off. So they're going to do a test. You see here, it's 30 questions. I'm not putting any percentage passing rate. I'm not putting 75, 80, 60. I'm not doing that. I'm treating this as data extraction. And I'm covering for them all of that stuff. Cells, organization, infection, and response. I'll just quickly click tabs. And I just want to show you, what that actually looks like on the course. So if I go into the actual course that we're looking at, so what have we got here? I'm asking questions from cell biology, organization, and infection response. I am not asking about bioenergetics. I'm making an assumption that this is where we are in our program. We've got to here today. All right. Now, obviously, you may well have got a program where, for whatever reason, you don't include this in order or whatever. That's fine. You can tailor it to what you need. But I've got this pre-summer diagnostic, and it's asking from cells, organization, and infection response. So what are we asking them? We're asking them everything which theoretically they should know already, in principle. Now, of course, some are going to be sharper than others. Of course, some students have going to have forgotten some material potentially. But that's what I'm asking, 30 questions on everything that they've covered so far. Now then, what my students are going to do is attempt that once, and I'm giving them a little bit of guidance. Every question counts, so ensure you are ready before the start of the test. Now, what I'm going to say as well, guys, this wording here, when I do the follow-up email to you, I'm going to give you the wording. You can change it, do whatever you want with it. You probably think of better ways than I've written it. But if you want to, you can literally blip that straight into an assignment immediately. Okay. Now let's just go back to assignments. So week 1, we've set a diagnostic. That is going to start to produce data for me on top of whatever we've done before that is showing me that where each lesson is in terms of that live data. The second thing I've asked them to do, and I should say, guys, if you look at the timing of this, I've opened all of these for exactly Monday 9 in the morning till Friday 4 in the afternoon. I've agreed with my students, no weekend study. Okay. Now you might want to just do it for 7 days, as long as you agree it with them. But this is going to open on the Monday. It's going to 9 o'clock. It's going to close Friday at 4 o'clock. Again, if you want to do it Monday to Monday, no problem. But I've done it 9 o'clock Monday morning till 4 o'clock Friday afternoon. That's when they've got that window, because they and me have agreed it. Okay. Obviously, you do whatever you want to do in terms of structure. With my group, I'm imagining that I've said to them, look, guys, we're going to do this. What do you prefer? Do you prefer it to be open for 7 days or for the weekdays? And they're going to say, look, we want the weekdays, if that's right. We want the weekends off. And if that's the case, structure that way. If they just say, I want flexibility, do it for 7 days. Okay. Now, let's look at the second element I've got in here. I've also asked them, if I just go back to here, I've also asked them to watch one lesson. Okay. Now, you see here, they've got till Friday, 4 p.m. And if I go into here, look what I've asked them to do. I've asked them to watch one photosynthetic reaction lesson, just for reference. That's this lesson here. Okay. So I've asked them to do one lesson, and I've said, your task is to watch. The assignment is open from Monday morning until Friday afternoon, as agreed, notice. I expect you to make thorough notes online and make an excellent set of physical notes, which I will be asking you to hand in when you return to school. Focus on key subject language and processes. And I've said here, I highly recommend that you complete 5-minute stint of practice mode quizzing immediately after completing. So I'll show you what this looks like for the student, but they're going to study that lesson. So far in the week, guys, we've got one test of 30 questions. We've got one lesson, which is 10 minutes. Okay. So we've got about 10 minutes for the test. We've got about 10 minutes, maybe a bit longer with notes for the video. And the last thing I'm going to ask them to do is I'm going to ask them in the same week, once they've done this lesson, I'm going to ask for one 12-question response on that exact material. So I've got them here, that exact lesson that I've asked them to watch, 12-question quiz, it's week 1. So it's 12 questions. I'm asking them for the 80%, repeat until you hit the standard, unlimited attempts, every score is recorded, okay? And I've given them a bit of guidance because 80% is challenging, right? So I've given this guidance. If you're struggling, use practice mode for a few minutes before. So they're getting this message of practice mode. Use practice mode, use practice mode. Return to your notes and read them carefully. Re-watch the tutorial. That's what they've got as options to get up to that level. Notice that I'm not in here saying, ring me for a one-to-one. Why? Because I've decided I'm not involved. It's for them, okay? So let's just go back. I've asked them here, week 1, pre-summer diagnostic test, watch one lesson, prove you know it. That's what I'm asking them to do. And that is over 5 days. Make it 7 days if you prefer, but it's over 5 days. Now then, let me just stop there. I think someone's asked a question. James, I was thinking of you, so this is from Linz. Hi, Linz. I was thinking of using this year 11 coming into our college. Any thoughts on that use rather than year 12 going into year 13? Do you mean year 11's going into 12, Linz? I'm assuming that's what you mean. I think it's a great idea if that's what you mean, going on to A-level study. The only thing I would say is a very practical point, which is before they're in, you're probably working in the sixth form where they're your actual year 11s. But if you're in an FE college, how do you GDPR-wise get them onto your Everlearner and extract their email? That would be the only thing. So if they're moving from another provider to you for year 13, year 12, that's the bit that needs managing. But I think it's a brilliant idea. Transition, and that's where maybe where you introduce them to chapter 1. Now the weakness of, okay, got you. Now the weakness of that is you've got no pre-learning to go back on. Okay, so just bear that one in mind. You'd have to rethink that. Now then, I just want to show you week 2, and then the theme will become very obvious to you. So this is week 1. For me, this is this Monday morning today until Friday. We're still in school, right? Next week, it's as if it's the summer holiday now, okay? So what have I asked them to do? Watch rate of photosynthesis for reference. That's that lesson there, the next one. I've asked them, you see here, I've asked them to do a 12-question quiz, exactly the same model, but notice what we've got here. I've inputted a whole course weekly review quiz. So in week 2, they haven't got a diagnostic. They've got watch the tutorial, 12 questions on that tutorial. Now let's just quickly check what this is. In here, this is what I'm asking them to do. So every week they're going to do this. Whole course weekly review quiz. So I'm sending them 25 questions. I'm keeping this as the target score. Repeat until you get it. This quiz covers everything. Chapter 1, Chapter 2, Chapter 3. But notice it also covers the 2 lessons they've just studied. Okay, and I've made that clear. And I've given them some advice. What shall I do if I can't hit 80%? Okay, and I've said to them, firstly, don't worry. 80% is challenging. However, I'm backing you. Okay. If you have had many attempts and you haven't got there, take a close look at your live data in the dashboard and look for individual lessons where your live test score is low. Consider spending a few, Martin, can you just change that? It's just done there. Sorry, it's my fault. Consider spending a few moments going over those lessons before repeating. Finally, I guess I'm saying if you never hit 80% but have tried really hard, I completely understand. I will not be cross with you. I'm just making that point. Rather, we will work together at the areas that are underperforming a little and address them together in September. So if you look at that wording there, finally, if you haven't got there but have tried really hard, it's okay, all right? But notice what I'm not saying. It's not okay not to get 80% first attempt and walk away. That's not okay. But if you've had a number of goes and you keep getting 78, 74%, okay, no one's expecting to do this 50 times, okay? Until you get lucky enough to get 8. That's just, maybe there's an issue there. Maybe we need to address that. But what I'm saying to them is I want that standard, okay? So what they're going to do, they're now starting to get the consistency of this message right. Keep going until you get that mastery standard. If it takes more than one go, absolutely fine. Thirdly, if there's a problem and I've forgotten something or I'm not sure about something, James is literally saying there, he's going to address it with me in September. So even if I'm wrong about something, it's kind of useful because we're going to address it in September. And then finally, guys, you'll see this theme now continues, but I want to draw out, if I just go back into here, I just want to draw it out here. So you'll see here, 6 days time, this is the week 2's work, it's what we just looked at. If we go into week 3's work, it's exactly the same. The only difference is we're on to that next lesson. What have we got there? We've got a 25-question quiz. We've got 1 lesson. We've got 12 questions on that 1 lesson, identical. So they're going to develop this sort of regularity. But I want you to notice now week 4. Week 4 is different, okay? And in week 4, I'm doing a midterm test, basically. So in week 4, I'm asking them to watch the uses of glucose just for reference. So we've now in week 3 done this one, now in week 4 doing this one. So I'm asking them to watch use of glucose. I'm asking them to do 12 questions that are identical, but notice what I've got here, midsummer diagnostic test. So if I just click into this one, this time it's a one-off attempt. Okay, 30 questions, no standard, topics covering everything we've done, including the recent work. Now, if I just jump back over to here, guys, notice what I've got in here. Week 1, diagnostic, new material, new material. Week 2, new material, 25 question review. Week 3, new material, 25 question review. Week 4, though, new material, midsummer diagnostic. Okay, one off everything we've done so far. Now, again, if you go back to the principle I mentioned earlier, which is I want the cleanliness of really up-to-date live data when they return to me. And then finally, guys, you'll see a theme now. So I've now got, so we're now past week 2, week 3. We've gone through week 4. They've done the midsummer diagnostic. And then we're now getting into week 5, 6, and 7. Week 5, I'm asking them to watch 12 questions, whole course. Week 6, watch 12 questions, whole course. And then in week 7, I'm putting in one checkpoint. That checkpoint there, this is the last week of the summer holidays. That checkpoint there covers only the new material. So I'm saying to them, it's this last chapter that you've studied, the whole thing, 25 questions, no feedback until the end of the question. I want you to get 8%, so have a go as many times. That advice again of what to do if you don't get there. And then finally, guys, at the last task of all, week 7, I've got end of summer 40 question test. Okay, so they're likely to do this the Friday afternoon before they come back to you on the Monday, whenever that is. And if we go into that, what have we got? This is a test to measure what you've remembered from all of our topics. 40 questions, no passing standard, the whole course, attempt once, every question counts. Good luck. So let's just kind of summarize that. So just to be clear on that one, I've got week 1's got a pre-summer, week 4's got a midsummer, week 7's got an end of unit. Okay, so I've put in pre, mid, and end testing, if you like. One, and when I say test, the reason I'm wording it that way, they're all testing them because they're asking them questions. But the reason I'm calling that a test is it's one go at it. Okay, it's literally no. Everything else is keep going until you've nailed it, basically. But with the testy bit, I shouldn't say testy in biology context, sorry. But in the test environment, they are doing one version of that assessment. However they score, that's what they score. And that's what we get back. Now, remember in the live test score, let's say in that period I've just shown you, let's take Fleur Delacour as an example. If I'll switch to B here in a second. Let's take Fleur. Let's imagine that she does all of that. And in total on, let's say, viral diseases, which feels appropriate at the moment. Let's say on viral diseases, she's ended up answering something like 25 questions. Okay. I'm going to know now exactly where her knowledge is on viral diseases. And if it's here, we're going to know it. And if it's here, we're going to be able to address that in September. What's more likely to be the case, though, is that because there's multiple repetitions, if she is here for viral diseases, she will know it from her dashboard. And because she's doing multiple attempts to get 80%, she will self-correct that to that level before she comes back to you. So she'll actually manage that herself. Okay, so she'll address that herself, come back to you, even if it's dipped because we didn't study it for a while. She herself is going to know that and address it before she comes back in September. Okay, now final things, guys. Let me just jump over and be a student on this for a second. So if I just zoom over and be a student, let's see what Fleur gets. Or let's see what a student gets is on the receiving end of this. So let's just, I always do Fleur. I always go with Fleur Delacour. I'm not totally sure why. I think it's because I've got the little photo of her. But let's think about Fleur at this point. Let's see what she's got, okay? If I go into assignments now, so right now, think that any moment she's going to have 3 assignments open. That's always going to be the case unless it's the weekend in my model. Okay, so what's she going to see here? Right, I've got to do that, and that in 4 days, right? So I'm going to go in. Here's my diagnostic test. I'm actually not going to do that one. I'm just going to go back to assignments. I'm going to go in here. I'm going to watch photosynthesis. It tells me what we've seen here. It goes in. It shows me I haven't done it yet. I go in and notice what I get here as we see. I'll just let that play in the background. Let's say this is your Now again, notice that everything is locked.
We are hungry, when we need nourishment.
Everything's locked in there, apart from this individual lesson, okay?
Plant-based, vegetables.
And maybe she's over here, and we're going over. Okay, let's click to the end. She's in here. So I'm trying to get to a nice, pretty bit. Here we go. So she's learning this as she goes, right? So she's studying this material, is tracking her activity. Let's imagine she's watched that whole thing, which of course she hasn't. Let's imagine she's watched that. In reality, what she's done 3%. Let's imagine she's watched the whole thing. What she's then going to do is she's then going to go into the 12-question quiz, and now she's going to start answering this. So notice immediately this is reinforcing her knowledge. Okay, so I'm not going to be I'm not reading this, so forgive me for getting this what is almost definitely wrong. Okay, so there we go, and there's my feedback. This one I'm answering here. Name one reactant. I'm going to say water. Okay. Yeah, let's put water in there. There we go. This one, I'm looking at the equation, and I've got to say, right, reactant to A, product to B. You see, check, depth, yeah. So the point I'm trying to make here is not to show you a bunch of questions, but is to stress to you, Fleur's studied that material in a really nice piece of teaching, and then I'm asking her directly 12 questions. Do you know this? Okay. And then she's got that whole course review. So if you think about it from Fleur's perspective, she knows Monday to Friday, I've got 3 tasks. Takes me about an hour. I tend to do it on a Tuesday because I've got a bit of time. Think about it from her perspective even. Let's say she is going on holiday. I mean, who knows what the hell this is going to look like, but let's say she's going on holiday. Let's just imagine for a second, she gets on the plane, or her mum and dad driving her through France or whatever, and she gets on the plane, and you get one of those moments which is like, sorry, but we've missed our spot. We're going to be sitting on the ground for an hour and a half. Really sorry, blah, blah, blah. What does she do? She goes, okay, well, look, this is my opportunity. I'm going to be landing in Tenerife later, so I'm going to do it here. Okay, and she goes bang, 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 bang on her phone, and she's up and running. I'm not suggesting using a phone out of airplane mode. An airplane is a good idea before I just realized that might be slightly questionable, but you know what I mean? The point is she knows she's got an hour's work. It's manageable. It's one chunk. She can break it into parts or do it simultaneously, do it consecutively. It's up to her, but she's got 1 hour. What do I know? She's coming back to me in September, having studied 7 new lessons, having proved to me whether she knows it or not, and having answered literally hundreds of questions from that which we have done before. I've had no marking to do whatsoever, 0. And moreover, if anything is being forgotten, I'm going to be able to see that. Now, the very last thing from me, and I sort of flashed this at you earlier on, the reason we made this document here, okay, this is the guide. This will tell you exactly what each task looks like if you follow my model, which you don't have to, of course. But the other thing we've put up here is like the theory that this addresses. Okay, now I don't know if anyone's into this stuff, but basically, if we look at the Ebbinghaus work, it basically tells us that when students learn something, depending on a couple of factors, they quite quickly forget it. And if you notice here, guys, this blue dot, this dot here is 30 days. Now, if you look at a summer holiday, how long is it? Something between 30 and 45 days, I suppose. What we're saying is that they will forget the detail of 75% of that material. Okay. Now, what we're trying to do is prevent this curve. All right. So we're trying to prevent this forgetting. So it's not just about review, but review helps because we know from what we call the forgetting cycle is that forgetting and the time to forget can be brought back to optimal knowledge if, and you see here, if the student does practice and review. So I'm building my model around practice and review. Why? Because I want them to forget more slowly. Okay, notice on this second, after practice and review 1, notice that the time to forget the second time doubles. The time to forget the third time trebles from the initial. So I want to cause forgetting to happen increasingly more slowly. And then finally, slightly controversial theory, Thalheimer. Thalheimer suggested, and I won't get into the stuff about spaced and normal learning because that's where the controversy arises. If you're interested in that, Thalheimer basically said, if they learn it more gradually or over a longer period of time with more exposure, more repeatedly, that's what they call space learning curve looks like. They forget it more gradually. The problem with that in schools is how the hell do you learn? How the hell do you not make a 2-year course, a 4-year course, and so on? So I'm not going to get into that. The answer is in interleaving. I'm not going into that. That's a whole other thing. But what we do know from Thalheimer is that if students do these teaching and practice after the learning has been done, okay, what we call reactivation, peak knowledge can be maintained over time. So my model of the summer school is built around this idea of reactivation of knowledge, which has either been learned recently or more in the past. Okay, so that's what I'm thinking when I set things like, if I just jump out of this, so that's what I'm thinking when I set things like this 12-question test, or this one here, for example, is the diagnostic. That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking about reactivating that which has gone before and giving the student the opportunity to ensure that it's not being forgotten. So while that's a very, very simple model, guys, what I've done there is I've made 21 assignments. They're all pretty much identical. I've got regularity. Now notice what I didn't do, okay? I didn't say to the student, here's an assignment ending on the 31st of August, say, 30 days after, yeah, 31st of August. I'm terrible with days in a month, I don't know why. Here's 7 videos to watch. Watch them by the 31st of August. What are all the kids going to do? They're going to watch them on the 31st of August. What do we not want them to do? Spend 30 days forgetting and then struggle with what we've set them. That's no good, okay? So I've also not said to them, do a quiz before the 31st of August, which has got 200 questions in it. They'll probably answer the same amount of questions, but I've broken it into those skinny chunks. I've also made sure, here's your week 1, here's your week 2, here's your week 3. Why? A couple of reasons. One is I'm trying to prevent that forgetting from happening. And 2, the other thing is I'm trying to build a behavioral set in the student. I want them to have this achievable chunk, feeling good about it. Achievable chunk, feeling good about it. Achievable chunk, and do it that way. Now, there is of course the secret ingredient, right? We can put any structure in place, but the secret ingredient is their respect of you. Because if you set it up and they value why they're doing it, if you've set it up and they like your, when I say like, you know what I mean? They value what you do in your class and the fact that you guide them and you teach them this, but they're going to work. They're going to want to work. Now that golden ingredient is something, of course, all teachers are considering all the time. Please don't think that I'm suggesting we should be sort of cowering and continually adorable to our students. That's not my point. But the point is that the rapport between the teacher and the group, of course, is the secret spice in the sauce in this particular case. Because with that rapport, they're going to go, I tell you what, if you look at that, behind all of that structure, the student, if they really reflect on it, they're going to go, do you know what? That Mr. Sims geezer, he sets me high standards, but you know what? He never, ever, ever gives up on a question. He never, ever lets it go. He backs me up every time. He expects me to do well, and he wants it for me. And if they feel that way, you know what else will happen here? They won't just do the work you've set. Okay? Now, one of the things, I didn't know whether to say this to you today, but one of the things that I would do with this particular group, right? You see, we're coming to the end of the course effectively during the summer. I'll still go over it in September, of course I will. But this is one of the little sneaky things I'm going to do, right? See what you think of this. It's a bit sneaky, really, but see what you reckon to this. I've just got to quickly go back and be the teacher. Let me just be... So here's Minerva. Have a look at this, guys. Before the summer, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to the groups. I'll just show you one of them. So here's... by the way, I've been setting this for 2 different groups. So it's the whole... Consider it the whole cohort, right? So I'm going to go in here. Okay, and notice how this group's set up. First of all, I'd have to change these dates because otherwise that course is going to expire. But notice that they've been enrolled for paper 1. But notice that in the summer, theoretically, we're finishing that course, right? So what I'm going to do is before I finish for the summer, I am also going to enroll this course here. So I'll start it now and I'll end it. Let's say that they're doing the exam. I don't know when the paper 2 exam is, but let's say it's, I don't know, let's say it's June the 8th. I don't know, actually know when it is. So, but let's say that's their actual exam date. Now, I've put that course in. Now, notice I have not set them a single task on that, nothing, okay? But when they go to their courses, they're going to see both paper 1 and paper 2. Now, all my tasks are on paper 1, everything. We're coming to the end of that paper 1 task. But what might a bunch of the students do? They might go, do you know what? I'm actually pretty good at this paper 1 stuff. What is on paper 2? And someone might just, or you might get 5%, 10%, 1%, 1%. Well, okay, 1%, let's say 3%, one student in 30. Let's say they go on there and they study a bunch of stuff from paper 2. That's a massive win for me. And I'm prepping them to be thinking in that mode. I'm prepping them to be thinking, right, we're going to finish this off strong because in September, this new stuff is coming. And you know what? I might even go on and have a look at that as well. It's a very nuanced point. It's not important. But for me, I'm trying to, what nearly came out of my mouth is I'm trying to groom them into a certain series of behaviors. You understand what I mean by that word, right? I don't mean in some sordid way. I'm trying to condition their behaviors so that they've not just got what I'm being told to do, but why did Mr. Sim put that course up for us early? And they know that I've got high standards for them, and they might just choose that bit extra. So I just want to open that door for them, and it's there. Anyway, yeah. All right. Okay, that's great. Okay, brilliant. Guys, sorry, we're just interesting morning here. Marta, who a lot of you may not have you've had emails from her, but this is Marta. Marta's off to a funeral this morning, so just trying to balance everything up today. Nothing, well, obviously not good news, but nothing supporting a friend, basically. Anyway, there you go. Pietro, question for you. What would you do if Fleur conks out and stops attempting work on test lesson from week 3 after a holiday? Would you attempt to re-engage? So first of all, I'm going to answer this in 2 ways. In terms of the structure I've shown you, no. Okay. So in terms of the structure I'm showing you, theoretically I wouldn't, and obviously there'd be very strong repercussions for that because she's agreed it with me, and therefore it's agreed, and therefore I'm going to have something to say about that. Now, how you do that in terms of your disciplinary relationship with the student, if your homework policy says no setting homework in holidays, it would be quite a tough one to do, right? So you've got to balance all that stuff up. But the reality is, because I would be doing a little bit of cajoling, but the thing I would do is from week 1, and I hope this doesn't sound manipulative, is I really try and catch them being great. You know what I mean? Like really try and pick out that brilliant behavior. Like, geez. So let's take this Fleur, for example. Fleur, like on that 12 question quiz, I'm so impressed. You ended up getting 100% Fleur, and you had 4 goes at it. And I noticed, Fleur, that on one of them you got 90% and kept going. I love it. Okay. And so I'm gonna try and do that kind of manipulation, if you like. I'm gonna that motivational work that way. But the other point I've come back to is she agreed it with me. So unless there is a fundamental issue, I am not going to be happy about that. I may even agreed it with her parents potentially as well. But if she's agreed it with me, to me, I'm going to quote Thomas Hardy, but I accept that as the word of a woman or of a man. If she said it to me, that's a deal, right? And that's my expectation of them. Then if you know where that quote comes from, it's Tom Brown's School Days, doesn't matter. But that's my expectation of her. So that would be the way I would address it. And probably what I would show, I mean, depending on homework policies, if the homework policy said, look, you can't set homework in holidays, which I know some homework policies, do you know what? I'd probably just say, well, look, you chose not to, there's nothing I can do about it. But, you know, we did all that work, Fleur, and, you know, maybe just reflect on it a little bit. I'd maybe go that route, you know. Linz, hi again. This has been really, thank you. Yeah, so just to be clear, so in terms of what I'm going to send you as a follow-up, I'm sending you the recording. I'm sending you this document here. I'm sending you this document here, this one. Okay, and Marta, just as she went, she just told me we've now got an editable version of this, which we didn't have until just a moment ago. So I haven't seen that yet, but I'm going to send you that as well. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to send you the wording for all assignments. So I'm going to give you this exact wording. Again, feel free to make it better or change it, put it into your own context. I mean, you don't have to put your assignments like me, but what I'm trying to do for you guys is like make this very easy route. In other words, like you guys, you've probably got 15, 20 assignments to make. That's going to take 10, 15 minutes in and of itself. So I just want to make the pain of that as easy as possible, okay? One thing I would say is when you're setting multiple assignments consecutively, just pay attention to details. So changing the word week 1 to week 2, week 2 to week 3, just proofread at the end. You can always edit them quickly. But I find when I do that, it's where I make most mistakes. because I'm almost copying text, So, the one where it said, right, weekly review test, weekly review, it's got everything plus photosynthesis. Then week 2, it's everything plus photosynthesis and rates of photosynthesis. So, it's forgetting, putting that extra text, things like that. So just a little bit of advice is go back over, or just ask a student, just quickly run through it. Is anything not seem right? That kind of thing is quite handy, because for me, it's like that wriggle room principle. I don't want them to wriggle. Like, well, you said this wasn't on the test. Well, okay, it was a typo, that kind of thing. I want to minimize that as much as possible. And Lindsay's saying, maybe I'm just saying, you said there about the assignment demo. I might not have sent that. I'm sorry, that's my mistake. But I will be sending that as well. I'll do that straight after this. Yeah, right. Thank you. That's a nice thing to say. That secret ingredient, don't undervalue it. How you can't switch that. If you've got, and I'm sure you guys look, why are you here? It's because you're conscientious teachers, right? But if you've got a weak relationship with the group, it's going to be tough to get this out of them. That little ingredient is actually quite, and look, they've been at home as well for months, so there's also an extra challenge at this point. I would really encourage, in the current circumstances, to get buy-in from the parent. I would really encourage that. Exactly what that looks like, I've got mixed feelings on, but I think almost I wouldn't be asking permission, because I don't think a parent should come back and would say to you, please don't make my child learn something. I think it's unlikely a parent would have that stance, but maybe that's a good idea. How can you see all the scores? Yeah. Okay. So this is from A Braithwaite. Sorry, I don't know your phone name. Apologies. So A Braithwaite's asking, how can you see the scores? So there's actually 3 ways that you'll be able to see these. So first things first, as the teacher here, I will be able to see the scores for my students in the assignments themselves. So I click into here and look, there's that 3% we saw Fleur do on the video earlier. Or for example, if I go to I did this version, I think. You see here, there's that score that's developing with Fleur. Now remember, that if Fleur does this multiple take test multiple times, I'll get multiple rows here and see all of her scores with their best score at the top. So it will come through that way. Okay, so they'll come through that way. The second way is in the dashboard. Now, actually, I haven't actually looked at the dashboard for this group in biology. I don't think I've ever looked at it with these not being real people. But let's say I go into let's go group for assignment demo 1. Let's go into biology paper 1. In here, you've got all of the scores for the students. Now you'll notice here, the person with most activity is Fleur, because I tend to demo with her. But for example, let's just focus on animal cell specialization for a second. So if I focus on Fleur and I focus on animal cell specialization, was that the one? Yeah, okay. So let's go here. So have a look at what we've got here, okay? The number I want you to concentrate on is this number here. That number there is telling me that Fleur's live test score is 29% rounded in animal cell specialization. Now, what does that 29% represent? Okay. Oh, guys, just real. Am I? Oh my God, that's so embarrassing. Oh, I didn't have my screen shared. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Let me go back. What an idiot. I was absolutely going for it there when I'll go back a stage. Let me go back to here. The joys of Zoom, hey? So apologies for a ping. The point I was making was that here, there's that 3% that I've got from Fleur on that viewing you saw me do earlier. So I see it in the assignment. If I go to assignment view and I look at the 12 question quiz, which is open now on photosynthesis, there's that score that's developing for Fleur there. So I get it in that context, okay? The second set of data, if I go to dashboard and I go to, obviously you won't have as many tiles as this because you're probably not, Minerva's teaching like 15 subjects, but if you go to live data for biology, and then if you select the group you're interested in and you select the course you're interested in, let's have a look at this. I'm gonna select 2 students, Fleur and Hermione, the top 2. And I'm going to select the 1 lesson of animal cell specialization, okay? So let me just make that a little bit bigger. So the numbers I want you to focus on are this one here and this one here, okay? So for Fleur, on this specific lesson, she has scored 29%, go rounded 29%, and Hermione scored 92%. Now let's just quickly reflect on what that is, okay? So that score represents any test environment question done on that individual lesson whether it's blended with the questions or not. And it's saying to me, right, the last 12 questions that those two have done, Fleur's at whatever it was, what was it, 24%? Fleur's at 29% down here, and Hermione's at 92%. So basically what it's saying is that in the most recent testing of this, Fleur's forgotten it, Hermione knows it. Okay, or was it that way around, wasn't it? Fleur's forgotten, Hermione knows it. Now, what you'll tend to find is a lot of green. Why? Because I've set the standard at 80%. So what the kids are going to do is, even if they're here, they're going to figure out a way to get it to here. So you're going to see often a sea of green with sometimes a little flash of yellow or even red, where there's a weak point or there's something that's not working out for someone. Now, that's obviously where you go in and do some kind of targeted intervention potentially. But don't forget, the student can do that themselves, and you want to encourage them to do that. But you get it that way. The third way you get it, and I will put this on the screen here, is that you get it in your assignment mark book as well. Okay. So can you guys actually, if I just put all the students in here, can you guys just have a look at, let me see, you see here where these are all actually in for me. Okay. So these are the assignments that are actually being done. So here's my midsummer test. Here's my use of glucose from week 4. Here's week 3. Here's week 2. Here's week 1, and so on. So I've got, you can actually see that 3% has come in there from Fleur watching that. Okay. So we've got that coming in. Okay. So that data is going to appear for you in that way. You're going to get that whole batch of data. And again, you can look across a snapshot. Okay. I've got lots are not started, but you can look across a snapshot of who's performing on each of these. And that's in your assignment tab. All right. By the way, if I reset filters, if I want to get to that from assignments, I'm going to go, you might not need to click these because some of it will come up automatically. I'm going to go biology, GCSE. I'm going to look at this group. I'm going to look at that specific course, and there's all my assignments. There's that end of, so you see that one's the last one they have to do, and the scores will automatically go in there. Now it's meant to be grey now because that isn't open, but it will open, of course, and then the scores will start going in. Now, one word of warning for you, okay, on this one. Do you see, let me go over here. Right, do you see this task here? You recognize that's the one that Fleur watched 3% in, right? And do you recognize here that this was we should be asking ourselves, why is this not at 17%? Because she's answered that. She did. You remember I did those 3 questions, right? 2 things. These scores populate in the tests once the student has done 1 iteration of the test. So I'm mid-test at the moment as the student. So it will come in once they've done an iteration of that, and it will come in that way. So just be aware of that. If they're mid-test or if they started it and are coming back to it, it will come in once they've done it. Whereas this, because of course they've got multiple attempts here, this is just, it's just counting them. Okay. But this score has not finished until they submit that test. It's not representative until they finish that particular unit. Whereas this is almost like we're counting up as they go. So, I mean, it's a very nuanced point, but just be aware of it. There we go. Sorry about that screen thing. That was embarrassing. My pleasure. So look, that's what we're doing, guys. I guarantee you, and in fact, if you want to grab hold of it earlier, I guarantee you we'll follow up with you in terms of the documentation. If you want to grab it early, guys, there's this folder here. Anyone can view, copy link. There's this folder here, which I'm putting into the chat, which has got all of the paperwork in that I've shown you on the screen today. But it doesn't contain the wording of the assignments, which I'm going to send round to you. Okay, so that's there. So I will follow up with you probably within the hour recording. I'll send that link again with all of those documents. And thirdly, I'll put all the wording in. Now, I'm not going to put in 10 versions of the same wording. It's pointless. So I think I've got 4 or 5 unique batches of text for slightly different assignment types. So I'll give you a version of all of them. What I would say to you guys is feel free to make that better. Feel free to improve that. The only discouragement I would make is, well, it comes back to those principles, not agreeing it with them, and just really big assignments for the whole of the summer. That won't work. Okay, if you set them 30 days worth of watching in one assignment, it's just not going to work, because even if they do it, they're going to do it last minute, or they're going to do it all in one batch. Why is that a problem? Well, people need that kind of regularity, or they forget things. So that would be something. So when I made those assignments, it took me less than an hour to put it all in. Okay, and I've got a whole summer of work for that group there. Okay, and again, if you've got multiple groups doing the same course, you've got 3 groups doing OCR, GCSE, or you've got whatever it happens to be, you can assign them all the same all at the same thing, as long as they're doing the same course. You can put them, it's one job does the lot, and you can put it in that way. So if you're a head of science, or if you're a head of PE, or you've got 5 GCSE groups, or you've got 3 BTEC, whatever it happens to be, that's really efficient. There we go. Any thoughts, any questions, guys? Anybody want to click in and have a discussion about things? Especially might need to remember to put the share screen on. Oh dear. Money, nice to see you, sir. How are you? Thanks, Pietro. Pietro, Pietro, remind me what you teach. We were in a session together, I think, last week, weren't we? I can't remember if you told me what you teach, so let me know. Yeah, Lewis, thank you. That's a nice message. Yeah, it's interesting, right? I mean, Fizz, I've got you, Pietro. Exactly what I was going to say. For me, this has come out of necessity, right? So I just teach a subject which, as I was a head of PE for a long period of time, and the thing I always found was that getting timetabled curriculum time, or getting advantage against, let's say, over, say, maths, English, science, even against, or over geography, say, or history, say, or I even found that in the lower rung subjects, even PE would sit below things like music, for example. And I think music's a wonderful thing. So science, so is English, so is all of that. But the point I want to make is that if I want to do the best jobs for my kids in this particular subject, in the structures that we've got, this is a good advantage that I can take. The other thing is when they come back to me, I know exactly where they are on different things, and therefore I can be very targeted. Now, I did miss a point, actually. Did you notice I didn't put any upload essay assignments in whatsoever? Okay, the reason I didn't do that is because it broke the principle that it creates work for me. So I'm assuming 0 work by the teacher in the holiday. If you want to engage, if you want to email, if you want to cajole, then of course, that's fine. I probably would, but the point is you don't need to. Would it be ideal for them to do a piece of writing somewhere in the middle of that, or somewhere ongoing? Probably, but it creates tasks for you. So that's why I didn't implement it. If you want to, feel free. That will be different this time next summer when the exam simulator is in play. Then I'll be setting them writing because it's going to mark it for me. So that's that'll be a different scenario. Again, I probably still don't want to overdo it on the writing. It's their holiday. Let's take it, for me, a bit of watching, note taking, a bit of quizzing feels right. But, you can include that that writing side if you want to. Ross, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'll quickly show you that. Ross asked about editing, so let me show you how that works. By the way, I had to do this multiple times yesterday because I kept doing typos in this assignments. But if I just go into assignments here, hey, damn it, I've been logged in too long. Let me just log back in. Apologies. Hang on. This isn't on the screen, is it now? Sorry, I've just got to get back to be the teacher here. As you see, obviously you guys will never take this route. I'm just switching to be this user. So in assignments, let's say I want to do something with this one. Okay, so I can go in. You can edit from there. So a couple of things that I can do, right? I can edit the text. Okay, so I should say that it's really important to stress here. Notice that this assignment is open. And all I can do is add text, okay? The reason is that this is being read. This is being acted on, right? So if we take something away, that changes the condition. So you can add text in, you can change the end date, you can change it to deny or allow retakes, you can change it to optional, you can remove students. I'll show you a smarter way of doing that as well in a second, okay? The other thing I'd say is, if you go to a not yet opened assignment, so a future assignment, go in here. If I click here, okay, I've got direct editing rights on the assignment itself. Okay, so I can change anything here. The point about the previous assignment is that people have already started it, and therefore what they're doing has had certain guidance. So we don't remove that. We add notes or clarifications, things like that. But before they've started it, you can change whatever you want. You can do it in whatever way you want to. You can add other lessons in, whatever you want to do. Okay, now, the other point I would make to you that's really helpful, let's say you're in a situation where you do all the agreement with everyone and you get a call from Mr. and Mrs. Weasley and they say to you, hang on, Fred and what's he called? I can't remember, George or whatever they're called. The kids, they're going to be on the beach for a week. In the third week, they're not going to be doing their homework. Can you please take those ones out now? So you've got to remove someone for that assignment. So just as a tip on this one, if you ever come to your assignments, these filters are really useful. So imagine you've got multiple different groups here, different assignments for different groups. I want to find here. Let me refine this. I want to find Ron Weasley, and here are all Ron's assignments. So if I go into, that was it, week 3, I think I said. So I can go into week 3 here, edit, brings me here. I come down to the students, and what I do is I find Ron, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to get him out of the assignment, or it could be that it's Ron and Fred. Okay, so Fred, he's now out of the assignment. Okay, so this now is assigned to all these guys. It's not assigned to these two. And I can quickly save that and it will edit that. So the point is, you've got a quick mechanism for removing students if you need to. Now, whether you then create the assignment again and put it double in the next week, that's up to you for those students. It could end up, we've got assignments all over the place. That's why that agreement of, even if you're in holiday, we all agree we're going to do this, right? Yes, sir. Let's go. Now, you still might get the call from a parent. And that's what you can do it that way. But if they've agreed, I think if it's an hour a week, you'd be quite. I don't think many students would opt out of that. I could be wrong, but I don't think many would. I guess the only other point really is like, I mean, do all students want to learn? That's an interesting question, isn't it? If you, and I can't really comment on this in your environment because everyone's environment's going to be vastly different. But if kids are opting out and like refusing or choosing not to learn, that's quite tricky, isn't it? So I don't think there's a short-term fix to that. I think that's more about that thing I was saying about relationship rapport, disciplinary model, homework policy, all this sort of stuff. But again, with what I've shown there, you need to realize that they've been using the platform the entire year. We've been relying on, they're familiar, they're confident. They've had my expectations of there the entire time. So of course, this is going to be a continuation into the summer rather than start in September. So they'll see that as a continuity model. I even tend to find that once you've got it in place and running regularly, let's take the weekly review quizzes, for example, the students won't want to stop in the summer. Okay, I've often had the case where the student will come to me and say, look, can you set another assignment this week? So I'm finding it's really helping me. I don't know. I don't have perfect groups. I don't have perfect scenarios. I have some of the students are right little anyway, but you know what I mean? Some of them are really irritating, bless them. But I guess it's that model where you've got this ongoing assumption of study, rigor. They value what you're doing in terms of, they do something, you feed it back, you mark it, gets back to them or whatever. They know that you're invested, and generally speaking, they're gonna produce. I do acknowledge there are certain circumstances that are difficult, such, will you get a call which is, how dare you send my students some summer work? Theoretically, you could get that. If you do, you do. It's still coming from a good place. You're still doing the right thing for them. Even if the parent doesn't agree, you're still trying to do the right thing for them. Just maybe preempt it as much as I've never had that personally, but theoretically it might happen. Anyway, I'm waffling now. Any thoughts or questions, guys? Anybody want to make an observation or come on, someone click in and say hello, and then we'll all go and put the kettle on. Ooh, silence weird, isn't it? Well, look, guys, feel free to drift off. Feel free to go and get on with the rest of your day. I'll be in touch with this very imminently. Cheers, Braithwaite. Enjoy your meeting. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. I think so. And I didn't want to focus on the COVID thing so much today because I almost want to say, look, educationally, this has value. But obviously, given the fact that it's really likely that kids have forgotten a lot of stuff, I think it's particularly important right now. I think the danger comes with, and again, I don't know everyone's school situation, so I've seen very different models. My own children are on a full timetable at the moment, so they're working really hard. But if the kids have been at this level of work rate and they've not had much to do, gearing them up to this is probably going to be quite challenging. So I do acknowledge that. And I don't feel I have the answer specifically to that one. But I agree with you, Petra. I think necessity. Let's assume for a second they're doing full sets of exams next summer. I'm hearing lots of rumours that they're going to be in July, the exams. Don't know if that's reliable, but that's what I'm hearing. It's going to be, you're going to have a chunk extra time probably, but who knows if that's the reality. I think there is a real danger that students are going to go towards those assessments in two states. One is dramatically underprepared, which is obviously a massive issue in terms of the learning academic side. The other thing is I think that both in the school environment and in the students' mind themselves, I think there's going to be quite a lot of tension. And for me, this is just taking a bit of, it's just finding that balance. It's finding that it's keeping us going. It's taking us forward without adding to that tension. So agreement and people understanding. Now, whether I would educate the parents about Thalheim and HEP, probably not. But you know what I mean? I might send them that document. This is why we're doing it. Argue with that, parents. Argue with the graph. Good luck. But you know what I mean? It depends on your relationship, but yeah. Cool. Guys, thanks, mate. Appreciate it. And Pietro, I'm assuming there is some Italian heritage here potentially. I'm not sure. I'm aware of. I've commonly made the mistake of noticing people's Italian names. I'm finding that people can be from all over. A lot of people from Argentina, for example, very Italian names. For example, it's quite interesting. Yeah, are you Italian yourself, Pietro? Ah, cool. I'm from where? I can't hear you at the moment. I'm not sure if you can unmute yourself. I can probably unmute you here. Let me try. How's that, Pietro?
Yeah, I'm Italian myself, but yeah. So Argentina is a big post-war, lots of Italian